Howdy y'all, and welcome to my first project video on the channel. Today we're going to be retrofitting a motor to this. This was my grandma's clock, hung up on her wall for, well, my entire life. They bought it sometime in the 1960s, and we're going to change it out to a slightly different type of motor. But let's get in closer to look at it. So here she is a bit closer. It's a nice clock. It's from the 1960s sometime, made by a company called Veritron or however you say that. It is a battery clock. This is the motor I pulled out of it, which the battery set in too long. As you can tell, it's leaked battery acid. This is a normal quartz motor, but this is not what it originally had. Originally, it had something like this. This is I believe this one's a C, yes. This is a C-powered battery motor. These came into production, I believe, in the 1950s and were in clocks like this in the 1960s. This is not quartz. It's not electronic, it's not computerized, it's not any of that. This is a wind-up motor, but the user does not wind it up. Rather, there is a battery on the inside that simply winds up the spring for this. It's not a long spring. It goes for maybe a minute, and then it needs rewound. The motor turns on, winds it back up, turns back off. They're fairly efficient. They work well. This one still works. It was produced back 1978, so 40 years ago. But this motor gave out a long time ago, and this was before you could really get them repaired, so it was switched out with this quartz motor, which is now long gone. I really liked this clock, and my grandmother loved it. It always hung above her bed, and now that she's gone, I don't want to give it up. It's a nice clock, and I actually don't have very many wall clocks. In fact, I think I only have two. I have this one, and then there's actually one on the wall behind the camera that you can't see, which is a wind-up one. I want to do something different with this. I used to have a few more wall clocks. Most of them were from the 1950s. They were plug-in, not battery. So we're going to make some different parts here. This is a synchronous motor. It came out of a clock from the 1940s that was beyond repair. The wood was gone. I mean, broken to pieces, rotted. The glass was broken. The face was destroyed. Even the motor barely works, but we'll get into that. I am going to turn this into a full electric wall clock, not a battery wall clock, using this very interesting motor. Now, I'm going to show you why this motor is interesting. You see, this motor doesn't actually have a motor, or not what you would traditionally think of as a motor. In actuality, and I'll try and get this as close as I can and hope that it focuses, this thing right here that looks like a little cog or flywheel, this is the entire motor. Literally, that's it. It just goes in there to all the gearings. That's it. This motor is so simple. If I can get it to work, I will show you just how amazingly simple it is. See, if you notice, it's actually not spinning right now, and I'm holding it because this wiring's not working correctly. So if I move it wrong, it loses contact and it isn't on anymore. It's not moving, but it is on. Now watch this. Oh, gotta spin it just right. Maybe I'm spinning it wrong way, who knows. There we go. You actually have to spin it to start it. I love that. I know it's weird. I just made it lose contact. The motor didn't stop. It's quirky. It's strange. It's not completely convenient, but it is fascinating. it doesn't make as much noise when it's upright. It's just I've got it in a weird position right now to try and show you without making the power stop. The power is completely stopped. Well, now I just got shocked. I gotta figure that part out. Oh, I think we got it working again. There we go. See if I can get it upright. You can see just lightly spinning there, and it is going. In fact, I think we can demonstrate that. That is the second hand. Again, it's quieter like that. So, the challenge here is to make this go on here. And we also have to rewire it. And because I'm trying to make it very old-fashioned, I'm going to do cloth wire. I've already ordered it. It has a fairly old plug. It is broken a little bit, but I'm just going to leave it on anyways. How I'm going to do this, I've already started. I built this. This wood piece here was already part of the clock for some reason. I'm not really sure why. I guess just to make the motor that it had the right distance for the hands to stick out. I drilled a small hole to compensate for this piece right here. This is where the little spindle of the motor comes through, but it does pop out. Now the rest of it's pretty smooth. There's a little piece right there that comes out, which we'll have to drill a little hole for, and there's a rivet there, and there, but I don't think we'll have to worry about that. This metal piece I made, I'll tell you how I made it in a second. The idea is when this is up, it will be mounted on here, it will cover the clock motor. It comes up just over the height of this. So if I put this, if I can get this in here. It's kind of, yeah, the cord's stuck. There we go. This comes right about here. So there's just enough clearance. I left a spot for the cord to go through right here. Now you may say, well, why is there words on this? That's because I actually made this from a caution sign. This stuff is incredibly useful for projects. It is thin, bendable, relatively rust-proof, and you can simply cut it with a pair of scissors, which is really nice. It doesn't work for everything, but for something that you need thin, bendable, and cheap metal for, it's perfect. I just cut this into two 2-inch strips and just glued them together with some E6000. It's still drying, which is why I haven't painted it yet. There's tape around it to hold it in place, and I put a very thick cardboard piece right here. This is where the nail will go, or screw, or whatever's holding the clock up. This will then be epoxied in there. This will be epoxied directly to the clock, and then the hands will come out the front. The idea is that this will be kind of a flat black, but I have to wait till I get the tape off to paint it. You'll see that in just a minute, and after I do, well, I'll glue everything together. In fact, actually, I'm about to glue everything to this right now. I don't see any reason not to simply paint over this. This should work, and it should create a really nice looking period clock. It should fit in a house from the 1920s without issue. That's the goal, to fit in with most of the stuff I own. So this is all done. I glued it. I just used some E6000 all the way around here, and I put some on the inside. This is the backing part, and this is all held together very well. It's painted and ready to go on. To make sure I get this straight, what I'm going to do at the clock face, I'm going to lay it so that it faces up. So now it's sort of 12 is that way for me. So I know I can just put it right here, facing up, and it should be straight. It doesn't technically have to be 100% straight by any means. Actually, I'm going to reposition it here and make sure that I'm keeping it straight. Okay. Now we'll just take some E6000, which seems to work quite well on this. You gotta kind of worry with aluminum. A lot of things don't stick to aluminum, like JB Weld, for example. Even sort of regular mixed style epoxy doesn't really stick all that well. This hole here goes up top, and exactly lining it up because the holes are perfectly symmetrical. Okay, we are good. Press it in a little. Okay, take off the table in case any glue drips out. I don't want it on my tablecloth. So I figured out why this wasn't working. Pretty simple issue. This is the original wrapping. Now it was wrapped in electrical tape too. The electrical tape is what was holding this contact on. Here's the end. Well, this is the end now. Basically, this was just loose in here, being held on in place by electrical tape. That's not good enough. That's why I was losing connection. So what we're gonna do is take some wire here, and I'm gonna solder it right into place. We're gonna rewrap it with electrical tape too, but first we're gonna solder it. I have a thing specifically to do this, but I'm not gonna use it right now. It's a little shorter. Get this a little flatter right up against there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's pretty good. I don't know if this iron is hot enough yet, but we will try. So the good news is that while it didn't stick great, it is working. Again, it gets quieter if it's up here in the right position. So all I'm going to have to do now is I'm going to put a little bit of super glue on this bottom contact. I'm trying not to move it so that it doesn't come off. But I'm going to put a little bit of super glue on this bottom contact here. And then I'm going to cut this off. And then I'm going to wrap this in some new electrical tape. And the motor will be ready to go. I did finish this. I figured this would be a good time to show it. It is working. I retaped it. I actually took this off and retaped that side. The wires are a little exposed on there, but I don't really care. They can't touch anything where they are. They can't touch each other. They're perfectly fine. It seems to be holding pretty well. Got the new, well, this is the old cord end, but I got the cord end on the new cloth wire. And this is genuinely cloth wire. A lot of people call this braided wire, but technically this is twisted wire. They might be braided as well. I forget the exact definition of what braided wire actually is. But this twisting here is called twisted. Braided can also mean the rounded cloth wire. If you want to know where to get this stuff, it's comes from a place manufactured here in the US called Sundial Wire. I'll, if I remember, I'll put a link in the description. Otherwise, you can just Google it. It's pretty cheap. It's not hard to, not as in quality. I mean, it's cheap to buy. So it's great for any project, any antique. I've used it for years and years and years. But the last thing I wanted to do before I went to bed, so that these would dry overnight, is take care of the hands. These are the ends from the motor. If you notice, they're black. Now the problem with that is that the clock is also black. That's a problem. Obviously they won't show up too well, and they are a little small admittedly, but they're nice enough to where I don't really care. So what I'm going to do is a real quick solution. This is a 24 karat gold leaf pen. Whether there's actually gold in here anymore, I don't know. Even gold leaf doesn't really have gold in it very often nowadays. Grab that side, and for matching's sake, go ahead and do the back of the second hand, which is red, and then just the tip. And then the rest I'm just going to leave red. I think that looks pretty good like that. Now we're going to mount it. And to mount this, I've got a cup here. And the reason I've got that is because the ends where the arms connect are going to come out this hole. I'm going to move the camera up a little. I think it's a little too low. I think I might have hit it. Okay. But they're going to come out this hole, so we can't just set this flat. So I'm going to put that here. There are three, I should say, rivets that stand up a little bit more than everything else. So they are going to be great spots to put some E6000 on. Now I'm also just going to put some right along here and here. And actually, I think that's probably good. Now, E6000 is really good stuff. It glues to pretty much everything. It is a glue. I don't think it's considered an epoxy. It's certainly not a two-part mix epoxy. It is a little expensive depending on where you buy it, but it does dry clear, which is helpful for a lot of applications, and it works quite well. Okay, that is in there. Okay, so we are done. This has set overnight. Everything's in there nice and strong. Nothing's gonna come out. Let's put the hands on. I believe at some point I might touch this up. You can see where the hands, the old ones, touched it and kind of rubbed some paint off, but we're not doing that right now. For now, we'll just put the hands on. If I can get them on, there we go. Okay, let's hang her up. There she goes. I know it's a little weird to go through all that work for a clock that isn't worth anything really, more than a few dollars. But it has been in my family for 3 generations, and it was my grandma's favorite clock. It's also not a bad looking clock, and it was a great way to use a really cool motor that otherwise I had no purpose for. I don't have any other clocks with that motor, despite having quite a few old clocks, both electric, a couple battery, and a few wind-up. But that is the only electric motor I have ever come across that you have to actually start by hand. I've never seen another one that does that. And it would be a shame just to throw that motor away. It's unique and makes a pretty nice wall clock. Cord coming down and sitting back a bit from the wall. I think it actually looks better than when it was just straight up against the wall. Hello, focus. Really cheap project. It didn't cost me anything except for a tube of glue and however much that sign cost, which I think was $2 or $3 if I remember correctly. Everything else was just stuff I had. Well, some wire, but I always have cloth wire laying around. I actually took that from another thing that I'm doing. And that is just about where we'll end. I will say I did one thing that I now regret. I didn't show you guys the wiring, and I'm realizing now a lot of you guys might not know how to wire something, whether it be completely correctly or a little bit incorrectly like I did with this. That's okay. I think I'm going to do a video specifically saying how to properly wire something. I have a projector that's supposed to be behind me. Somebody wired it a long time ago but did not do it correctly. I already have the cord taken off, but I don't have the new one on yet. So I think I'm going to make a video for that. Just a little tutorial. Maybe I'll do some how-to videos. I got enough knowledge up here, especially for old stuff. So until next time, happy trails.